So I did my workout. I got my workout, my push-ups in, my curls, my squats, my overhead presses, anything I could do with the two concrete blocks, the two cinder blocks and the piece of wood, and using the Dockers push-ups. I got my workout in, and then I went for a swim. And I didn't really sleep. My sleep patterns weren't really good, and they're still not really good now. So I grabbed a couple hours sleep, and then I got up and I went for a little swim. Jumped off the back of the boat into the water and swam around, and it was brilliant. Then the next thing, a couple of people joined me, and we just had a little swim around, and they were a bit drunk, a little bit wheezy from the alcohol, but real nice people. They got in, had a little refresh, got up, showered off, and then went and lay down and fell asleep. And I didn't really sleep that first night. Oliver had bagged off with one of the chicks. He'd gone off somewhere. Was probably giving her the good news, and everybody was happy. 6 o'clock in the morning came very quickly, came very early. The sun rose, or started to rise about 4. I watched it come up. It was absolutely stunning. It crescendoed. It just hit the highlight about 6 o'clock in the morning. The sky was pale blue. There was a few clouds, but everything was just fantastic. The water turned orange and red, and it was lovely. A few people slept through it, obviously. Betty had breakfast ready: scrambled eggs, bacon, sausages, everything that basically American people ate. Steaks for breakfast, juice, tea, coffee. All the alcohol had been put away. Tim was 2 sheets to the wind. He was, a bit drunker than he should have been. I didn't like, even Oliver didn't like that. I didn't say nothing. Tim carried on like nothing he hadn't done anything wrong. I was definitely going to tell David. Oliver said that he was going to mention it to David as well, because it was a very bad look. I had a couple of people say to me, "Is the captain drunk?" And I said, no, he's just tired. But so yep, everything was good. Breakfast was put away. It was going to be an hour to the Blue Hole. Very smoothly. The water was shallow, 8 to 10 feet deep. Loads of dolphins that morning. Eagle rays. A couple of sharks. Tim said that they were probably lemon sharks. Lemon sharks have a double dorsal fin. That's how he basically knew. I didn't know that. And they were quite snappy. They could be, they could be quite dangerous. So we just drove on. It was nice and slow. It wasn't any more than 4 or 5 knots. Lovely place. Tim just hit the autopilot, and the boat took us to where we were going to go. I was just absolutely amazed at seeing the Blue Hole. It was just like it's like the earth had just opened up, basically, and it was just a giant dark blue hole. Oliver had been there several times. The dive was going to be 100 feet. It was going to be our first dive. It was going to be 100 feet for 10 minutes with a 3-minute safety stop. So basically, your time began when you got in the water, and you did a bounce dive basically down to 100 feet, and there was giant stalagmites and stalactites down there, and they are basically coral, and they grow, and they're just like giant fingers. One side, I think the right side had them, and the left side didn't, so we dove the right side. And apparently coral grows about an inch a year, I'm not too sure, and these things were over 100 feet in length and 60 to 80 feet in diameter. So apparently the Blue Hole was a collapsed cave, or a sinkhole that had collapsed in I think 30 or 40,000 years ago, or something like this. I'm not too sure. And it was like diving into a pint of Guinness. The outside of the Blue Hole was all coral. Jacques Cousteau, my hero, scuba diving hero, had dynamited 2 sides to get in, the Calypso to get in. There was another boat, I think it was called the Reef Runner at the time, was on the left-hand side. We stayed on the right-hand side. We didn't see them on the island, and maybe they just came straight out to the Blue Hole. I'm not too sure. But it was a guy called Ray Bowers from Belize, who I was to later meet, who was another shithead. And so Oliver gave a briefing. We tooled everybody up. We got all the gear on. A couple of people just were a bit intimidated by it, and they just wanted to snorkel. Again, Tim snorkeled with them. We counted people off as they got into the water on a clipboard. We sent out 2 guidelines out of the back with buoys on them. We instructed people to get into the water, come up and give us an okay, and to go and hold on to the line. I got in the water first as a safety diver and instructed them where to go on each side. There was one on each side, so we had basically 10 people each side. Oliver would take the first 10 and I would follow behind him with the second 10. And this is my first time in the blue hole, and looking down into it was quite intimidating. It was just black, basically. So the first 30 feet was all sand, beautiful white with corals, fish around the outside of it, and then it got darker as you went down. So Oliver just says everybody to stay with each other. I had a Siloom or a light stick on my tank, a blue one. Oliver had a red one on his. And so Oliver had a red team and I had a blue team, and I just told the people to keep an eye on it. But as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you can't see colour. I think past 70 feet, you don't really see colour. We all had flashlights. A lot of people turned them on and had them dangling on the front of the BCs, which was easy for them to see. And we made our descent. We deflated our BCs. I gave an okay, and I went down first very slowly, equalised on the way down, and once I got comfortable, I followed Oliver. Oliver upended and just started to go down nice and slow. His group followed him. I maintained about 10 feet behind Oliver's group, and Mike followed me, and I just basically turned around, deflated my BC and sank, and just watched people coming down behind me. I wanted to make sure that everybody was coming. I would give them the okay every now and then, check the gauge. Oliver leveled off at 100 feet and started swimming through the stalactites and stalagmites. I followed. Oliver checked his gauge. I checked ours. Made sure that everybody was basically in line, and then give them the thumb to go up. So Oliver took his team up. I sat back and told my team to go up, and I watched them go, and I was tailing Charlie, and I made sure that I was the last one behind them and made sure that everybody was going up. So history of the blue hole was there was three or four bodies in the blue hole. People had died in it. There was a dive instructor called Vicky, an American on the island, who had lost a diver, and I was to meet Vicky a few months later. She had lost a diver, and the bodies weren't recovered, so they were still in the blue hole, which was unfortunate. But yeah, they were at the bottom of that, and because it was so deep, 475-80 feet, nobody had the equipment, unless it was a small sub, to go down and check everything out. So that was the history of that. The dive went well. Everybody's mind was blown. My mind was blown. It was a little bit daunting diving in that blackness of water. I'd been to over 100 feet on regular dives in San Pedro, where you could see, but the water was a lot denser and a lot darker and colder. The water was very cold going down. So we all made it up. We did a 3-minute safety stop. Everybody's mind was blown. My mind was blown. Ola was just sitting back smiling. Tim had everybody on the boat. Tim was already on the rum, up in the wheelhouse, and you know, I wasn't very, very, very happy about that at all. I wasn't going to say anything directly to him. I was going to just let Dave deal with that. So Oliver was first on the boat, got his clipboard, took people's names as they came on. They shed the weight belts and their BCs, and we took everything off them. We made sure people sat down. There was 2 showers on the side of the boat, and they showered off one at a time, dried off, toweled off, and sat down. Cokes, orange juices, sandwiches, and everything was there for people. It was absolutely brilliant. So once we were happy that everybody was basically on the boat, we stood off a little bit, and Tim dropped anchor. Usually he was just going to head in, and we dropped anchor, and people had a second breakfast. So it was, Betty had food already done. It was absolutely brilliant. Tim was still on the drink. I noticed when I went up to the wheelhouse, he had a bottle of rum sitting beside him, and a bottle of Coke. And I looked at it, and he looked at me, and he just knew I didn't approve of it. And I didn't say nothing. I just looked at him, and my eyes narrowed, and I just said to him, I said, that's not appropriate. And that was it. And he kind of, like this. And I just says, I'm going to just leave it down to Dave. And then I left the cabin. We set the autopilot after about an hour or two of just chilling people out, allowing them to degas and relax. By this time, it was roughly 9 o'clock, half 9, and then we decided to head back into San Pedro, and it was going to be a 60-mile crossing. It was absolutely brilliant. We didn't have any dolphins or any whales or anything. It was just a straight run-in, but people were just absolutely blown away. They thought me and Oliver had set everything up. You know, they thought that we knew where the pilot whales were. You know, how did you know they were going to be there? And we were like, you know, we just got to know the waters. You know, fucking just blowing fucking air out of our own asses. It was really good. People, they were just so gullible, but they were really nice. It was a nice trip back in again. People lay down and had a little nap, and some people went to the bow of the boat, and we were only doing 10 knots, which wasn't really, you know, too fast. The Manta 4 was a great boat. So people were lying on the front, getting a bit of sun. People were just lying in the shade on the back, sleeping. I found a spot on the deck to one of the Giro mats down, and I just lay down and I just fell asleep. I slept for a couple of hours. I think we all did, whereas Tim was up in the top with Betty, and they were just chatting away. Betty was lovely. We pulled into San Pedro. We got in there about, I think it might have been 3 or 4 o'clock maybe, and tied up at the dock, and we made sure that everybody got off. They were tipping us hundreds of dollars. You know, I think we all roughly made about $500 US each. I think that's how much they paid us in tips. It was just unreal. This huge smile on Betty's face with that amount of money for her 2 little kiddies was unreal. I was blown away by $500. That was another $500 that was going to go into the bank for me, and I was happy with that.